I am 103 years old, and before my time here runs out, there is something I need you to understand. Something most people avoid saying because it unsettles them. It is not the kind of truth you will hear from motivational speakers, self-help books, or even the people closest to you. Not because they want to deceive you, but because facing it requires courage many never develop. I have lived through more than a century of sunrises and goodbyes. I have buried 3 husbands, said farewell to one of my children, and watched nearly every friend from my youth disappear into memory. Entire generations have come and gone while I remained, quietly collecting lessons I never asked for. And after all these years, one realization follows me like a shadow. We live as though time is endless, when in reality it is astonishingly fragile. But I did not learn this at 90, or even at 70. I learned it when I was just 33 years old, though it took the next 7 decades to truly understand what that moment was trying to teach me. It was the autumn of 1955. October had just begun painting the trees gold, and the air carried that crisp promise of approaching winter. I remember the exact day, a Friday, because I had spent the entire week looking forward to Saturday night. My husband, Thomas, had promised to take me dancing. We had been married 8 years and were raising 2 energetic little boys who filled our home with noise and laughter. Thomas worked long shifts at the factory, yet every morning before leaving, he would gently kiss my forehead and say, "See you tonight, Eleanor." Those simple words felt guaranteed, like tomorrow's sunrise, until the day they weren't. That Friday afternoon, there was an accident at the factory. Machinery failed. Chaos followed. By the time someone knocked on my door, my life had already split into a before and an after. They told me it was quick. They always say that, as if the speed of loss softens the blow. What no one prepares you for is this. When someone leaves without warning, they carry away every word you thought you had time to say, the apologies you postponed, the gratitude you assumed they already knew, the small "I love you" moments that felt safe to delay until tomorrow. That night, after the house fell silent and my boys were asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table and made a vow through tears. I promised myself I would never again treat a single day as ordinary. I would live deliberately, love without hesitation, stop postponing joy. For a while, I believed I was honoring that promise. But life has a quiet way of pulling you back into routine, and before long, I forgot. At first, it seemed like I had truly changed. I held my boys a little longer each night before putting them to bed. I said, "I love you" more often, sometimes for no reason at all. I tried to notice the small things, the way sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor in the morning, the sound of laughter drifting through the house. But slowly, almost invisibly, life resumed its familiar rhythm. There were bills to pay, responsibilities to carry, and expectations to meet. Grief softened just enough to make room for routine, and routine slowly became autopilot. A few years later, I married again. His name was Daniel, gentle, patient, the kind of man who never raised his voice and always made sure my car had gas before I even realized it was low. With him, I found stability again, something that felt like safety after the storm. We built a life together that lasted over 4 decades, 42 years. When you hear a number like that, you imagine a lifetime filled with unforgettable milestones. And yes, there were beautiful moments, holidays crowded around the dinner table, summer evenings on the porch, quiet mornings with coffee shared between us. But do you want to know what weighs on me now? Not the arguments we had, not the seasons when money was tight or when stress stretched us thin. My greatest regret is far simpler and far more uncomfortable. It is the countless ordinary evenings I treated as insignificant. All the Tuesdays when he asked if I wanted to sit outside with him, and I answered, "Maybe later, I just need to finish this first." All the walks he suggested that I declined because I was too tired. all the conversations I half listened to while thinking about tomorrow's chores. I lived beside him for 42 years, yet too often I lived distracted. You see, no one tells you this about reaching my age. Loss does not happen just once. It echoes. Every memory becomes a mirror, showing you moments you rushed through, chances to be present that you barely noticed while they were happening. You remember the hug you shortened because you were late, the story you nodded through instead of truly hearing, the laughter you assumed would always return. And once someone is gone, those ordinary moments transform into treasures you would give anything to relive. When my son Michael died, I was 65. Cancer took him faster than any mother is prepared to accept. I remember sitting beside his hospital bed, holding a hand that once fit inside mine when he was a child. His voice was fragile, but his words were clear. "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't call more." In that instant, my heart shattered in a completely new way. Because the truth was, I hadn't called enough either. I wanted to tell him that none of it mattered, that we still had time to fix it, to talk more, to be more. So I smiled gently and said the only thing I could manage, "It's all right, we have time." But deep down, something inside me already knew the truth. Time is the one thing that never negotiates, and sometimes, by the time we realize its value, it is already gone. My third husband, Walter, passed away just 2 years ago at the age of 98. We shared 21 beautiful years together, years I once believed had taught me everything there was to know about love, patience, and presence. And yet, even after a lifetime of lessons, I still caught myself making the same mistakes. There were evenings when he spoke to me while I absent-mindedly scrolled through my phone. Moments when he repeated a story from decades ago, and instead of listening with warmth, I quietly wished he would hurry to the end. Times I thought, I'll give him my full attention tomorrow. But tomorrow is a promise no one is guaranteed. You might be sitting there thinking this all sounds a little heavy, perhaps even uncomfortable. After all, everyone knows life ends eventually. It is hardly shocking news. But that is not the point. The real danger is not that life is finite. The danger is believing that this truth somehow applies to everyone except you. When you are young, time feels like an endless road stretching far beyond the horizon. You assume there will always be another chance, another visit, another conversation, another opportunity to finally live the way you keep telling yourself you will someday. Let me tell you something with absolute certainty. Someday is one of the most dangerous words in the human vocabulary. You tell yourself you will travel once you retire, only to discover your body no longer moves with the same ease. You promise to reconnect with your sister after work becomes less demanding. But the busy season quietly turns into decades. You plan to write the book, learn the language, start the business, mend the relationship, when you have more time, more savings, more clarity. But here is the cruel irony. You already have time. What most people lack is not time. It is awareness of its value. Day after day, hours are traded for worries that will not matter 5 years from now. Energy is spent on people who drain rather than nourish the soul. Attention is surrendered to distractions so trivial they will never even become memories. Then one day, if you are fortunate enough to grow old, you will look back and see something startling. You did not run out of time. You simply let it slip through your hands. Now, I am not advising you to abandon your responsibilities or impulsively chase some dramatic reinvention of yourself. Life requires commitment to work, to family, to the structures that support us. What I am asking is far more challenging. Pause. Look carefully at how you are spending your days, this very day in fact, and ask yourself whether your life reflects what truly matters to you. Because this life of yours is brief beyond comprehension, and it will never repeat itself. So pay attention, not someday, today. Let me ask you something gently. Is your grandmother still alive? If she is, call her today. Not next week. Not when things slow down, today. Because I can tell you exactly what she might be doing right now. She could be sitting quietly in a chair, flipping through old photographs, tracing faces that once filled her world. Or perhaps she is gazing out a window, watching life move along without her quite as quickly as it once did. And somewhere in her heart, she is thinking about the people who no longer call as often. She tells herself she understands that everyone is busy, that younger lives are full and demanding. But understanding does not prevent the small ache that grows each time the phone stays silent. If your parents are still here, treasure that reality more than you probably do. When they are gone, and one day they will be, you will not dwell on the arguments or the moments when they failed to understand you. Those things fade surprisingly fast. What lingers are the calls you meant to return, but never did. The visits you postponed. The afternoons you could have spent sitting together without needing to say much at all. I know this not as a theory, but as someone who now stands on the other side of that experience. I had 2 sons. One has been gone for many years. The other, Samuel, is now 76. Every Sunday without fail, rain, heat, or snow, he comes to see me. He is a devoted son, the kind any mother would be proud of. And yet, when he walks back to his car at the end of each visit, I find myself watching a little longer than necessary, wondering quietly, will I see him again? At my age, every farewell carries a question mark. That is not pessimism. It is simply mathematics. But here is something important you must understand. This uncertainty is not reserved for the elderly. Every goodbye, no matter your age, holds the possibility of being the last. The difference is that youth convinces you otherwise. I have a great-great-granddaughter named Lily. She is 16, bright, full of energy, with her whole life stretching ahead of her like an open field. When she visited recently, she spent most of the afternoon looking down at her phone, her thumbs dancing across the screen while messages flashed endlessly. I said nothing, not because it did not matter, but because I remember what it feels like to believe time is infinite. She assumes there will always be another visit, another afternoon, another chance to look up and truly see me. But one day, long after I am gone, she may remember that afternoon and realize she was physically present, yet mentally somewhere else entirely. And that realization will sting in a way she cannot yet imagine. That is the kind of regret I hope you never have to carry. Not the regret born from major mistakes, those we often learn to forgive, but the quieter sorrow that comes from simple absence, from being there, but not really there. Because the people you love will not always remain within reach, and the greatest tragedy is realizing their value only after the opportunity to show it has passed. I know, deep within myself, that I will not be here much longer. There is no fear in that admission, only a calm acceptance. When you have lived for more than a century, your body eventually begins to whisper that it is tired. Mine has carried me through wars, celebrations, heartbreak, and unimaginable change. It has done its work faithfully, and truthfully, I am at peace with the idea of resting. What I am not at peace with is the possibility that you might drift through your own life the way I drifted through so much of mine. Because the most important lesson I learned arrived far too late. The moments that define your life will not be the grand, cinematic ones. Not your wedding day, not the promotion you worked so hard for, not the milestone birthdays or carefully planned celebrations. Those memories are beautiful, but they are not the ones that will sit beside you at the end. Instead, your mind will return to the quiet, ordinary fragments of time you once overlooked. A random Tuesday afternoon when your father asked for help fixing something, and you chose patience instead of irritation. A slow Saturday morning making breakfast, while laughter filled the kitchen and no one felt rushed. An evening walk where you truly listened, not to respond, not to correct, but simply to understand. These are the moments that form the real architecture of a life. Simple, unglamorous, easy to miss, yet priceless beyond measure. And the extraordinary thing is this: those moments are available to you right now, woven into this very day, if only you decide to notice them. But noticing requires intention, because the modern world is expertly designed to steal your attention away. There will always be another notification, another obligation, another worry demanding urgency. If I could speak to my 33-year-old self, the woman sitting at that kitchen table on the night her world collapsed, I would tell her something she could never have fully understood back then. You are going to forget this lesson, again and again, not because you are careless, but because you are human. Human beings drift. We fall into routines. We assume there will be more time. So the goal is not perfection. The goal is returning. Return to awareness when you catch yourself rushing through a conversation. Return to presence when distraction pulls your mind elsewhere. Return to love when familiarity tempts you to take someone for granted. Do it imperfectly, but do it consistently. I have lived roughly 37,000 days, and if I am painfully honest, I can count on my hands the number of days I was completely, wholeheartedly present. That is my deepest regret. Not that I earned too little or traveled too rarely, but that I sleepwalked through stretches of a life that was quietly asking for my attention. Please, do not wait 70 years to understand this. Do not wait until the chairs around your table sit empty before realizing how precious those gatherings were. When you finish reading this, do something different. Call someone you love. Sit beside someone without distraction. Look, truly look, at the faces that make up your world while they are still here to be seen. Because I tell you this with all the certainty a long life can offer. Later is a promise none of us actually possess.